You're listening to Across the Pondcast. Cybersecurity rants and war stories from both sides of the Atlantic.
Hello and welcome to Across the Pondcast, a show where we talk and occasionally rant about cybersecurity topics with perspectives from both sides of the Atlantic. I am Tib3rius. I'm joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Mr. Andy Swift. Andy, how are you doing?
Good afternoon, Snuggle Bunny. I am really well. As usual, it's been a long week. We're getting to the end of it. So yeah, what have you got in store for us today, sweetie?
That's the first time you called me Snuggle Bunny, but all right, okay, we're going to go with it. It's in the episode now. Speaking of which, the title of today's episode is Pentest Bonuses Are Broken. Yes, we'll be ranting about bonuses in Pentest Consulting. Should be a lot of fun. I think when we were planning this episode, we didn't really think we'd have much to say. Judging by our show notes, we may have a little too much to say.
I think it's turned into a bit of a rant rather than anything else, which is good. Until my boss hears this episode, and then might be no more bonuses for Andy.
Yeah, we're putting our bonuses on the line to bring you content. Okay, so I think we got to really address the fact that when we say pentest bonuses, it's because we were both pentesters, right? I know you're not really a pentester anymore. You're a freaking fancy-ass director. But what we really mean is consultancy bonuses, I guess, consultant bonuses. But like, screw it, we're both pen testers, or we at least were, and so that's the kind of bonus structure we're familiar with. So I think get that out of the way first, right?
Yes. I still pen test occasionally. It's a bit of a different world now. Yeah, I kind of want to go back into it now, do more of it. But hey, that's a conversation for another day. Let's talk about pay.
That's the conversation your boss is going to have. Wait a minute. What's wrong with our bonus structure? Also, you want to leave?
No, not intending on going anywhere, by the way. But yeah, I do want to do more pen testing. Keep my foot in. I guess at that stage we've been doing like the technical direction stuff for like a little while, and you're like, do you know what? I kind of miss just doing the odd pen test and going along sitting on a freezing data center floor, and I kind of miss that.
Oh, I remember.
But yeah, we used to take inflatable sofas down with us. Sitting nice, just to stay comfy. Like, they never had anywhere for you to sit, so why not that? Or like the sort of foldable deck chairs you get at the service stations. They're always good, very helpful.
All right, should we talk about what works with bonuses in general? I think that's probably a good way to start.
Would that be lots of money? That's the bit that works.
Well, I guess we could start with like, what is a bonus in general? Because I feel like, I don't know, the word bonus, right, implies that it's obviously money that is not necessarily something you're going to get, but you get if you meet a series of expectations, or that the company meets a series of expectations. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like it's kind of expected anyway. Like, Christmas bonuses are kind of a thing and a big deal, and companies that give quarterly bonuses, that's also like, you know, there's always that expectation you're going to get a bonus. So it's tricky because obviously when we talk about sort of your total compensation, so which is generally speaking your salary plus any potential bonuses, right? But that's not really total compensation. It's like, that's like estimated, maybe. It's like a kind of compensation, kind of total. So it's odd with bonuses anyway, because it's sort of a value that you're never really guaranteed to have, but at the same time, it's something that everyone kind of expects to get. So it's kind of a weird sort of dichotomy there.
Yeah, and a lot of companies will do this in really different ways. And I think a lot of areas and different departments in companies will have very different expectations of what a bonus looks like and how it's measured. You'd take like a sales department, for example, you've got most places, a fairly clear-cut way of measuring success or what that looks like. And I think in terms of pen testing, we're very much, we're not really like an engineering team. We don't sort of manufacture stuff or install stuff. And we don't sort of sell stuff. So there comes that question of like, well, what do you measure? Because you can't just measure how many reports a bloke's done. That's just odd. So like, what do you measure? How do you measure performance for someone and make that performance makes sense to upper chains of management as well. Because they're going to want to know how you're measuring people. Like, speaking from a management point of view, they're always going to want to know how you're measuring your guy's success. And this happens like we do reviews like every quarter where we are, which is, I haven't seen that anywhere else, but it kind of works for us because we get to work out what everyone's budgets for training looks like every quarter. So twist it on its head, it works quite nicely. Get more out of it. But at the same time, there's that expectation of going through those steps and working out and explaining why someone's been good at the job of pen testing. And sometimes those technical things that I'm judging them on as a technical person doesn't necessarily like match up with sort of their expectations and understanding of how like bonuses should be measured sometimes. Because it can be like, oh yeah, he's registered like these 4 CVEs, he's done some incredible research around XYZ, and that means this, and this. And it's like, nope, blank face. How do we measure? Yeah, but how many reports has he delivered? So yeah.
Yeah, the reporting one is interesting because obviously the main thing that springs to mind, which a lot of people will be like, well, reports delivered is a good metric. And I'm sat thinking, well, if you're doing like an internal engagement for 2 weeks or something, and that's all you do all year, that's what, a maximum of 26 reports. Whereas if you're doing a 3 or 4, even 5-day web app pen test, that's like 52 reports you could probably hand in. Yeah. So like, even if you sprinkle a few 2-week pen tests, which there are 10-day pen tests, I've done plenty of them. It's like, there are different ranges of testing, and it's not like the web app pen tester deserves more of a bonus because they've done more tests. So I think what works though, specifically based on my experience, when bonuses aren't tied to one specific thing, but are tied to a multitude of things, we'll go with like, obviously billable hours we'll talk about at length, I feel like. So we'll skip over that first. But stuff like writing blog posts, right? If you have a company blog and you want technical content on a company blog is a really good idea because it attracts people, it attracts potential customers to you, and it also attracts potential new employees. If they think that, this company has a really technical blog post, they have really smart people, I want to work there. Maintaining internal documentation. If you have like a wiki, right, for processes, if you're sharing write-ups for certain new issues that you found, that kind of thing, I think that's good to contribute to a bonus. Writing tools, obviously, I think is good. Giving talks at cons, right? That's also, quite a big deal. So I think any successful bonus program has to have that kind of degree of, I don't know what the word is, but like just not putting all your eggs in one basket, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just going to get my notebook out, take some notes, because that's a really good point. And I think not a lot of, maybe over here more than over there, I don't know. But there's a lot less of that goes on over here. There are some companies, few and far between, that do it very well. And there's some very good companies in here that churn out a lot of really good blog posts. They have people speaking left, right and centre at events, and they do it really well. I wouldn't say it's the same for every single pen testing company that there is here, especially for ones that have been bought out by larger consultancies or a part of something larger or a part of another team. They're not like a purebred pen testing outfit. I tend to find that they kind of struggle with that sort of stuff and sending people to do those sorts of things. Like talking at conferences or talking at events is incredibly good for a number of reasons, not just because we love going to cons. Like your sticker collection is growing by the day, but it's a really good thing to getting your name out there and getting people to trust you. Because if you have clients in the audience sat there listening to you as well. I remember one we did together ages ago, speaking at a shady little club thing donkeys years ago. And I can remember a client conversation afterwards went along the lines of, because they were speaking with their account manager afterwards, who was also there. And they were like, no offense, I don't want to talk to you afterwards. You're not the one I want to do my pen testing. I'm staying with pen testing because of these guys over here, because I've just listened to them speak, and those are the guys I want to do the work for me. Not you. I don't care about you. And the account manager, to his credit, was like, yeah, that's fair. I'll just buy you beer. And off he went. But yeah, like the exposure you get from these things is great. And I think the reward needs to be attached to those sorts of things, and not just a purely how much revenue have you generated type of thing. Like, yeah, I think it's smart. It's an amalgamation of things. And if you try and build too many things into that, it becomes too complicated and unmanageable. And if you try and base it just around a few things like revenue, yeah, you're also going to fail eventually, because that can definitely lead to like people demoralizing very quickly when they don't get bonus payments based on one thing. Like, there's a lot of bonuses that are tied to things like company EBITDA and stuff like that as well. So if you're not reaching within a percentage of your EBITDA target for your company, bonus payments aren't triggered for like the entire company. No matter how well you've done, no matter how many talks you've done, no matter how many tests you've done, revenue you've generated, whatever your metric, you got something like that in there, that could be quite demoralizing as well. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I feel as well, if you are going to tie any kind of bonus to company profits, it has to be a percentage of the bonus. So you should never be like, well, we didn't make enough money, nobody's getting bonuses. It should be, if we make a certain amount of profit, then we do basically, I mean, that bonus is almost like a profit sharing kind of thing, right? So we hit our targets, we made X amount of profit, therefore everyone gets a percentage of that profit as a bonus, as like a little extra. But that should never be, I would even go as far as to say that should not be the majority of the bonus. Like, that should be maximum 25% of the yearly. Let's just go with annual, because quarterly is a bit more confusing. But let's go with annual bonus. Even if you pay it out quarterly, annually it should never be more than 25% of the bonus. So 75% should be purely based on an individual level of some kind.
Yeah, we use scales where we are. And yeah, broadly speaking, that works, as long as it gets triggered. Yeah, percentages are not too bad, but yeah, you've got to set that percentage and make sure it's sensible and it doesn't overpower and overweight things. Because yeah, the idea is you want to keep people happy, not demoralize the crap out of them. So yeah, it's quite a hard balance to strike between those sorts of qualitative metrics and like the hard numbers that upper management wants to see half the time. Yeah, tricky.
We'll talk about what doesn't work then. And there are two things I have listed. One of them was kind of the trigger for this entire episode, but we'll cover that shortly. The first one, though, and this is something that I've experienced at a previous company, client feedback, by which I mean sometimes, not all companies do that, but sometimes if you end a pen test, especially if you have some kind of integrated system where you mark a report as complete or something, sometimes you'll have like an automated customer satisfaction form that's emailed to whoever the account holder is, right? So the main contact. And usually it's quite a simple survey, maybe a few questions, rate everything out of 5 or something. And the way the bonuses structure was, bonuses wasn't completely tied to that. It was actually like a fraction of it. But it was still like, if you got a 5 out of 5 or like a 4 out of 5, that would go towards your bonus. But getting like a 1 out of 5 and 2 out of 5 might knock you down a bit. There are a few issues. Well, the first one is nobody really does them. So it's like customers just don't. Nobody really. I always. It's funny because I use Amazon a lot, right? And I always look at like reviews, and there are quite a few reviews, and I'm always thinking, who does the review? I never leave reviews. Do we know who leaves reviews on Amazon? Because I really never do. In fact, the only time I have is when something's been bad. Like I've had a bad experience, I want to warn people about it. And that is the second reason why customer surveys don't really work, is because if customers leave bad feedback, it could be because the pen tester did a bad job. But it could also just be a whole plethora of other reasons, and the customer isn't treating it as a rate your pen tester sort of form. They're treating it as like, this is my experience with your company. This is with just the general company as a concept. This is my experience. I had a bad time with you. And that could be, I've seen it happen for like just stupid reasons. Like the test got delayed, right? We had to move the test because the tester got sick or something, right? We had to move the test suddenly. Or they didn't like the font in a report. They didn't like the layout of a report. we couldn't export immediately to like TSV or something. We only did CSV exports, something, right? Like there are a whole bunch of reasons customers can come up with to really just not like the process. Or maybe they thought they were buying a service and we delivered what they bought, but they were expecting something completely different. None of those are failures on the pen tester side, but ultimately could count against. Now, I will defend that company because most of the time when we had a negative review, we would analyze it and make sure it wasn't actually for any of those reasons. And, most of the time I would say it was like, oh yeah, well, we're not going to count it against the pen tester because, it's literally not their fault. But I still think it's just dumb, but just mostly because hardly anyone does them. It's nice when you get a 5 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5, but still, it's like, it's just not very good feedback, I think.
I resonate with so much of that. Like just as you were listing things off, I was like, yeah, we've done this. So we don't send out forms anymore, just for that reason. I mean, there was a period we went through where certain accreditations we had to do required us to get feedback at the time from customers and clients of that particular tester to put towards evidence for their portfolio for XYZ accreditation. Ridiculous. They've since done away with that, thank God. But we had to send all these questionnaires out, and the trouble was when you're trying to get accreditations and things for personal, or it's somebody's individual like certifications that you need the stuff to back up and become part of a portfolio for, there's always like a time pressure on it. And the trouble is, after every test, we started sending these surveys out going like, rate my pen test type of thing. And you'd get like 1 in 30 back just on kind of average. It was stupid. And even then, like people either reply if they are very disgruntled about something or they are very happy with the pen testing process. So we got like these two really polar opposite replies for like one person. We're like, this guy is a genius. He's the best. And then on the other hand, we had like, no, this was terrible. But then you read into it, and because we work at a company that has like multiple different areas to it, pen testing, managed service, and all sorts of other things, like even mobile phones and such as well. So it's really like a really diverse company with lots of different branches to it, a very big place. And it is quite conceivable that a client could be a member of or take a service from one area and also take a service from another entirely different area with people that vastly different parts of a company. It might be they've just had a bad experience with somebody else that day, and that somehow makes its way through to the pen testing form. So that kind of measurement, it just doesn't really stack up or work for things like bonuses, because you never get a complete picture of it. We even do, a lot of other companies do this as well, like post-test debriefs and things like that afterwards. But you tend to find you offer them out. Not every client will take them. So sometimes you don't get the rest of that feedback loop. You only get I'd say probably about 40% of clients actually take us up on that offer to sit down, go through reports, just have a discussion afterwards and answer questions and things. Some just don't need it, but some, I think they just, it's a bit like that Amazon review thing you mentioned. You get that kind of questionnaire fatigue, don't you? Or like, we get hundreds of them. And yeah, no one wants to fill in another one of those. I think especially if you're buying something like a pen test, which is, most pen test services are if you think of externals, web apps, I mean, there's small bits of work you do maybe a few times a year for most people. It's kind of done and dusted. You may not want to fill out a survey just for that. It's like, I just want to get this pen test done and over with and report in my portfolio so I can sign XYZ off, or get this certification done that says I have to have a pen test. Tick box. Those sorts of people are just never going to tick boxes. They're never going to want to fill out a survey, are they? Let's be honest.
Yeah, it is the extremes that sort of trigger, which is why I've actually found an interesting technique, especially on Amazon. If you want to find a really good product, ignore the 5 and 1 star reviews and the 3, because 3 is just meaningless. Like, look at the 4 star and 2. If you leave a 4 or a 2 star review, I think you're one of the most honest people in the world. Because you're not like, this product was amazing and I'm just going to give it 5 stars automatically. You're like, it was good. There were a few issues, because of course there were, and I'm going to list them. And overall, I recommend this product, but it's not like, I'm not going to rant about it. Or if it was 2, it's like, I could have rated this 1, but I'm not going to, because it did do this, right? So, like, I feel like the 2 and 4 stars, which hardly anyone does it, but like, they're honestly worth more to you. than any of the 1, 3, or 5s. I feel. Anyway, that's just me.
Yeah. That's why sometimes you'd get those feedback forms back and it'd be like, this pen tester's got 5 stars for literally everything. Maybe, I don't know. Like the quality of the written bits were just terrible as well. It's like good pen test, like okay, thank you, super detail. But you can't use that stuff to base things like bonuses off. It's just not. I think it's a nice, hopeful idea that would work, but I don't think in reality it does. Which kind of brings you back to what do you use to measure in terms of like quality inputs? What is a quality input?
Yeah, and so. The second thing, the biggest, the elephant in the room, if you will, for what doesn't work, but is for some reason used across the industry, utilization.
Here we go.
We've reached the point in the episode where I think every pen test consultant watching has been like, yes, they said the word.
Util.
Utilization. Billable hours, whatever you want to name it, is possibly one of the worst metrics for measuring for just giving bonuses in general. And yet it seems to be the one that every or almost every pen test consultancy uses. And I understand why, because it's such an easy number to calculate. But it's so bad.
It really is. It is and it isn't. I can feel the entire weight of the internet just going, it is! It is!
This is director Andy saying, oh, actually.
No, some spreadsheets. I hate spreadsheets. But it is and it isn't. I think when I sit down with people and I have this conversation about, oh yeah, we're not in charge of our utilization, we can't affect it, it's not really down to us of what we get booked in. It's not directly. Yes, it depends on how well your sales team are doing. It depends on what your sales team are doing. But there's also a fair chunk of it on the other side that goes, what are you doing? Are you putting yourself in the best position to be on the best possible tests? And again, it depends on the consultancy you're at. Because if you're one of those sorts of consultancies where you pick the work almost off the conveyor belt, a bit of a different story. But if you're one of those where it gets assigned to you and resourced out to you, it's a little bit of a different story, because if we're on the resourcing side of it, you want the best person for the best possible job, or the person that is qualified to do a specific sort of job. And if you just happen to have more of that type of work at that point in time, then great. Like if you've got like your guys that are very capable red teamers, for example, red teaming usually comes with a lot of days attached to it. Like no one's doing a 5-day red team engagement. I mean, if you are, the scope's probably not great. So yeah, you tend to find those guys are a little bit more billable because the work they do naturally has more days attached to them. Whereas like your junior members of staff, and there's interesting thing in management I've seen a lot over time is that some people are just like super content doing like the odd external test and the odd kind of simple web app test here and there and never like progressing further than that. They're sort of content in life, just doing most things, and they're happy in their happy little space. But they're never going to light up the utilization figures because they're never going to like gain those extra skills you need to do all of the other little bits of testing that you pick up. I think we're always very focused on like infrastructure and web app being the two sort of big bastions either side of a testing spectrum, but there's all the little things in the middle, like SCADA testing, like mobile app testing, service testing. There's so many little branches to pen testing, but if you're not involved in those ones and you're not putting yourself out there and giving yourself a best position, yeah, I don't think you're ever going to expect the best utilization. But is it a good metric to use? No, that's maybe another question. I think there's definitely a way to manipulate it in your favor. I still don't agree with it being the best metric to use. No, after that large detour.
I think that's the key thing is, yeah, you can manipulate it in your favor. But the question is, I mean, should you have to do that? But also, there are certain times when it is just completely out of your control and you're thrown into chaos. And it's not even like, okay, well, we can't assign you to tests because you don't have the requisite skill set, right? There are instances where you're assigned to a test and it gets to the day of the test and the customer turns around and says, we can't do the testing now. And you'd like to be able to say as a company, well, I'm sorry, you paid for it. It's been on the schedule. We contacted you over logistics last week, so you have to lose the money. And in an ideal world, that's what would happen, right? Unfortunately, there's always that balance. Like, do you risk? Is it a customer you can do that to? If it's a customer, it's ironic. If it's a massive customer, like who have invested millions into Pentest at your firm, they'll probably be fine with that. Because if you're at the point where you're spending millions of dollars on pen tests, you're the kind of company that has that money to just throw away. You're the kind of company that, you hear about where random people just send invoices for things that they never did and they just get paid and it's a massive scam. It's that kind of thing, right? But in this case, it's just there. Some companies have money to throw away. Some companies build that into their risk profile, whatever. And the problem is you can't do that with every single company. Like there are companies that are like, well, what the heck? That's kind of unfair. It's not our fault that we couldn't do this, or this, whatever. And so the problem is how you deal with that on your side of it, right? So I'm a firm believer that regardless of whether you charge a customer or not for a test that didn't happen, you should either, right? Well, you should definitely try and schedule the tester on something else if you can, if there's something available. But if not, you should still give them that time as billable. It's technically not billable time. You should fully, as a company, should fully give them that billable time. If they've tried to put them on something else and failed, just give them the billable time. It wasn't their fault. They did nothing. They got screwed over. You shouldn't punish that tester for something that was completely out of their control.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I totally agree with that as well. And therein lies one of the problems. So, yeah, you do all you can to put yourself out there, and then things can get cancelled last minute. We have a client that is chronic for doing that. I'm sorry if you're watching. Probably know who you are. But they're chronic for doing it. So much so they've got a reputation. But, yeah, we have an understanding with them in terms of how things get paid. But, yeah, those days don't necessarily go against. I mean, we don't measure utilization figures as a metric anyway for bonus payments. Obviously, we measure it like we do like to know how much money we're making. Yeah. But yeah, when they get cancelled, it's at least that doesn't affect individual people's bonuses. I think if you're doing that, there's something really wrong there. And I also think the other thing is you can go out there and put yourself in as best position as I said, and try and affect those things. You could be the best red teamer in the world, but if your sales team are not geared up to work with you to sell that level of work, you're also going to struggle. And is that person's fault for being mega qualified in a mega niche area, or is it a problem elsewhere in the company, or the company favors selling a specific type of thing? I mean, there are pen testing companies out there, right? That just do web testing, as you know. And that's their bread and butter. That's all they do. They don't really stray into other areas, and that's fine. They get by on that. So, some companies just favor certain types of testing or certain things that fit in with the rest of their business. Like for us being an MSP as well, like the easy sort of cross-sell for us is largely into things like infrastructure. It's never usually going to be things like applications or services. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, we do a fair amount of that, but it's the cross-sell element is largely going to be things like infrastructure. So the company you work for and you're in can sometimes kind of dictate that kind of area and direction that your natural sales will go to. So yeah, it's like I say, you'd be the most qualified person out there. It doesn't always get you far. It can certainly help, I think. It'll certainly help get you the most tests scheduled for you. People got faith in your abilities. But yeah, at some point you've got to work with those other teams to try and make sure you are selling the right things. But maybe that's a conversation for another day.
It is an interesting point though, because you bring up okay, what if you're a super niche tester and the company just aren't selling that many things? It does beg the question though, during the interview process, presumably, you've been hired. It was a question that was asked. What can you do? What do you do? What are you capable of? So if a company brings on a person with such a, fine-tuned specialty, right, knowing full well that's what they do, and then just don't give them tests, how much is that on the tester and how much is that on the company for just like, why would you do that? You know?
I mean, you got to understand who you're bringing on and who you're hiring. Like, I mean, like
Yeah.
For example, if we were hiring you, I know you are very firmly planted in the web app like section of a garden. And if we start firing you onto like internal tests and things like that, you're not going to be a happy bunny. So yeah, I think it's 100% on the company to work out who they're hiring and make sure they've got people in the right positions. Otherwise, it kind of looks like you've just gone on a hiring spree because you want bums in seats, and you just think, yeah, just because you could do basic pen testing, we'll just sell loads of that and get our mega capable web app guys to go and do things like AI testing or external testing and stuff like that. It's like, well, no, I think it's the number one way for like getting people out the door, really.
I was going to say no company ever has gone on hiring sprees and just overhired and then had to lay off a lot of people. That's never happened in cybersecurity before.
Never in the history of time.
I will say, and so you bring up me as an example. I think it's a bad example, and I'll tell you why. Web apps is like 70% of every single test. Like every test that's sold. Like if you look at the pie chart of test types, like it's like literally mostly web apps, right? It's not even close to anything else. So it's like I've very thankfully chosen my specialty in an area that is like just the biggest. So meanwhile you have like thick client testing, which is honestly like these days just tiny, right? It's a tiny sub area. Like AI, even probably smaller. I mean, it's probably going to boom in the next few years, I reckon. But yeah, like those areas are just tiny right now. It's sort of it's like right now I feel like it's a three-way split between you got web app as the big one, but then relatively close in second and third I would put internal and cloud. I think those are probably the twoest, and I maybe swing external in with external, like just infrastructure generally. I think is probably a good thing. But yeah, like it's hard to hire someone in any of those specific roles and then be like, well, we don't have any testing for you. Like there's always web app testing, there's always internal testing, there's always cloud testing. Somebody needs it somewhere. But yeah, I feel like with let's call them the extra specialties. All right, that kind of stuff. I can definitely see a case where you'd hire that person and then you just can't put them on anything. And it's like, well, what the heck? Like, why?
Yeah, there's an element of that all shiny in hiring markets sometimes. Oh yeah, you can do all this really fancy IoT testing that's really niche. Yeah. But as you say, like 70% of our revenue is coming from web app tests. So I might be able to find something for you at some point. Yeah, sure. Great. So yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think you can kind of skew it both ways. You need to acquire enough abilities out there so you can acquire enough different testing types to be as maximal billable as you possibly can and as useful as you can in as many different areas sometimes. Or you set out your stall and say, this is what I want to do, and make sure your stall's not like a super niche corner that no one hires people for, I suppose. Be all and end all. It's not a good utilization just for all those reasons. It's not a good metric. And like there's another argument to say, there's those super niche people in those interesting areas that you don't see much. Sometimes you'll get clients come along, big clients that will need that niche type of testing. If you're not armed with the right people to go and do it, you're not going to be able to deliver it. And that might be part of a larger deal, a larger tender process, and that can take you straight out of the picture for certain things. So those people have more of a worth than you might first think, and it might not show in utilization figures, but it might show in other figures. Like it may be part of having those skill sets on side might help you win, I don't know, a 100k deal, which is super good. And you wouldn't have got that if they didn't have those skills, or you couldn't boast those skills throughout your organization or show that level of talent. But yeah, the flip side of it is you don't have that, you might not have won that deal. So it's again one of those ones that measuring that in utilization, that person might not be the most utilized of people, but they are that hidden kind of entity. They are bringing in all that extra work, and it's very hard in sort of management terms to make sure you're picking up on all those little things and going, actually, we only won that deal because we've got a super good CSIR like capability tucked over here. And that's the only reason we got that tender. That's the only reason we can bid on that contract. And that's the only reason we won it. Yes, that person might sit there and not do much for like the last 2 weeks. But that contract's worth a lot to us. So sometimes those little things are a little bit hidden, I think, as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Going back to something I think you asked at the beginning of the episode, how do you measure the success of a pen tester? It's tricky.
About this much.
Remember, this is an audio only well, not really.
For YouTubers, it's about this much. For everyone else, it's about 30 centimeters. That's how good the test is. 30 centimeters.
So, yeah, this is the thing. Because obviously, right, when we're talking about pen testing, let's make a few assumptions. Let's make the assumption that you only have one pen tester to a pen test. I know in some cases that's just not accurate, but let's just for the purposes of this argument, let's assume that because it makes things a bit easier. So obviously, you can't really do stuff like, well, how many vulnerabilities did they find? Because if they test something that's really secure, they're not going to find any vulnerabilities or many vulnerabilities, and that's not their fault. So it's not like a case of this person didn't find any vulnerabilities, therefore they're a bad pen tester. Like, there have been times when I've tested web app after web app after web app, and there's been absolutely nothing. And, it's like the imposter syndrome creeps in. Like, oh my God, no, I've lost my talent. And then, like, the next week you find an SQL injection and you're like, oh, okay, no, I'm fine. But, yeah, you can't really tie it to that kind of stuff, even though you might be tempted to. The other thing that I think is, because you don't want to be subjective, or you want something that's as objective as possible. Some subjectivity is going to creep in at some point. I feel like tying it to reporting and daily deliverables of some kind is probably the best bet. So with reporting, there are obviously some objective things that you can do and some subjective things that you can do. Like with reporting, if you have a report that's on time, right, firstly, so it gets out the door, it goes into QA on time consistently, that's an objective thing that you can measure. And a little more subjective, and this is probably not a good idea, but sort of, how many changes do you have to make to the report before, in QA? And the reason I say it's probably not a good idea is you never know which QA person you're going to get, right? Even though companies have QA standards, you could send a report to 3 different QA people and come back with 3 completely different sets of notes on how to improve the report. Yep. And so that's where the subjectivity like creeps in there. So that might not be a good way of doing it. But I think at least measuring sort of, okay, well, did this person write the report quickly? Did they get it out on time? Right? That's good. The other thing, daily deliverables, simple stuff that you can measure. Like if you have, as a company, a policy that you send a start testing email and maybe like a daily update or midweek update and an end of testing email. Like, are you communicating with the customer enough? I think that's something you can measure as well. So I feel like you can sort of tie it to some measurable stuff that isn't necessarily related to pen testing, but related to the process, which at least shows that they are following along and trying to do something instead of just, twiddling your thumbs and not actually doing testing,
Yeah. As a manager, putting like a wrap around those things is quite important, because otherwise they look kind of invisible to like upper management, senior management, which is a problem, because like the only things that usually get passed upward if you just leave it and you don't highlight these things is just revenue figures. And part of the problem is if you don't highlight any of these other measures or any of these other metrics for what is a pen, or you haven't defined what is a good pen test or what you can measure your people by, the only thing upper management is going to see as revenue and numbers. And then, God forbid, you should have a non-billable day. The question suddenly arises of, oh, what are they doing on that day? And having to explain all of that. And yeah, I really like the idea of delivery times, because that is something I've seen people do really well and really badly. And trust me, really doing it well is within your interest for your mental state as a pen tester. Because if you have, we've all been there, by the way, as well, as you sort of learning, go through juniors and all that sort of stuff. We've all been there. you have pen test reports piling up. One's overrun maybe by a little bit, and then that bleeds into the next test, and you're still reporting was trying to test something else, and it all just piles up and up and up. And I've seen people do that before, and I've seen them really fall foul of it. And then deliverables and report delivery times just go down and down and down and down and down. And that's the thing to try and avoid. So yeah, I think it's making sure you can report efficiently, deliver on time. That's a really good metric to use, because you're in control of that as a pen tester. You know the findings that are important to the test, what to include, you know what bits you can feasibly chop out, which you don't need if you're running out of time. You've only got a finite amount of reporting time, right, sometimes. So you can't just spend weeks and weeks and weeks perfecting every single minor little issue. Part of the art of reporting is to make sure you're focusing the report on the really interesting and important things for that client, not telling them they've got like ICMP timestamps enabled or something like that, when you know that they've got a bunch of critical things to fix first. So there is an art to that, and it's a very measurable thing you can do for that. And then on those, we call them white space days in ours. I don't know if that spreads to the rest of the industry now, but I've noticed like 2 or 3 other companies calling them white space days now. So I don't know, maybe it'll spread to like the whole world eventually. We called it that basically because, do you remember that scheduling system you designed? Like if you had nothing in your diary in that day, it would just be a white space. So it's just called white space days. And it seems to have like just other people seem to have nicked it and used it as well now. So it's a bit weird. Maybe we'll get more people using it. Who knows? We'll start a thing. But white space days, it's showing what you're doing on those days and kind of wrapping some kind of metric around it to measure it. So for us, in terms of white space days, what we do is we turn those into, we have lists of things people are going to be doing on those white space days. So it might be a research project they're working on, it might be a talk they're delivering, it might be a vulnerability they're working on, a CVE, whatever. And we've got project plans for each of those individual little things that we can measure people against. So when they're not on those days, we can at least go, oh, well, they've made progression in this project, they're at this stage of this, and it's something you can measure. So come bonus time and totting up time, it's sort of, you get to it and you go, oh yeah, we have done this. Instead of just going, oh, it's a white space day. That's the end of it. That's the end of the conversation. At least you can back it up and show all the other good they're doing. Because if you don't do that, like I said before, it's just invisible to upper management, and you don't see it. That's a real problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What are your feelings on spot bonuses? Because I feel like we have a channel at work, but it's basically where people can, you know, if you've worked with somebody and they've done something or they've gone out of their way, you can like tag them and say, hey, by the way, this person helped me with this, that, or whatever, or this person did a really good job. And I've worked at a company before where spot bonuses were a thing on top of regular bonuses. So I don't think spot bonuses should replace like regular quarterly annual bonuses. I do think they're interesting though. The only issue with them is super subjective, right?
Yeah, I find I like spot bonuses as a concept, because I think there needs to be a disparity between that and your actual bonus as well. Like the spot bonuses can't be huge as well, so it just kind of makes a mockery of what the actual bonus is. But it needs to be big enough to go just a pat on the back, not like a jelly baby and some pocket fluff that we've got spared here. Oh, I'd be happy with that. It needs to be.
I was gonna say $10 Uber Eats gift card. Yay, CrowdStrike.
Well done for weaving that in. But yeah, no, you're totally right. Yeah, there's another company I heard of that are giving out tea bags as like a well done. It's like, oh, thanks. But not like a packet of tea bags, like an individual tea bag. Congrats.
I think we gotta say minimum is $100, I think, for a spot bonus, right? I don't see so. Anything lower than that is kind of like just a bit odd. Yeah,
but anything like that, and even if it's like, I know, vouchers for Amazon, it's something that you can take and go, oh, thank you, someone has recognised my effort. So I think they're really important. I do agree they are highly subjective on who gets them, and I've got them before for doing like helping out like clients on who have, like, part of my job's incident response, right? They had a massive ransomware incident and I did the incident for it. But because they were such an important client of ours at the time, it was like, oh yes, well done, thank you for helping them. Oh, you get spot bonus. So it's like I've just done what I would do for any client. Like I've literally done incident response as I would do it for anybody else.
Don't tell them that.
It's all over the internet now. But it's that thing, isn't it? Like I go out of my way for any client, but that's a subjective thing. I might do that same thing for another client. I might go out of my way again. I might spend weekends, nights trying to resolve an incident, and that wouldn't go recognized. So it's kind of a bit of a roller coaster, because you're like, 1 minute it's like, yeah, it's major, that's cool, they've recognized it's good, and then the next down part of the roller coaster is like, oh yeah, well, okay, does it not matter anymore? So there's good and bad things to come out of them, and yes, it can be highly subjective. You shouldn't really ever take them for granted. I don't think they shouldn't be that frequent that you do. But I do like them as a concept, even if it's just a pat on the back and it's to go, we recognise you've done something awesome and you continue to do awesome stuff. So yeah, overall, I'm in favour. Yeah, as long as there's something small.
I feel like, and this may just be sent, like, I don't know if this is general sentiment in the industry. I think people prefer having, for their regular bonus, something that is tangible, that they know what they need to do in order to get it, and that they have control over. Because I did bring this up with a few friends about like a month ago or something, just talking about bonuses in general, and I was like, utilization-based bonuses suck. Should we just go back to, like, you know, where you have a manager who meets with you and tracks your progress, and they decide whether you get a bonus or not? And their reaction was like, no. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. Well, let's scratch that idea off then. And I understand why. Like, that's like subjective, and it depends who your manager is, and there's no real, unless you have like it written with your manager, this is what I want, this is what I need to do for you to give me a bonus. But even that it's still subjective whether your manager thinks you've done that good, right? So it seems that people want, like, they want something that's trackable. They want something that they have control over and is as objective as possible.
I think there's two schools of thought there. And I think the first one is the manager route can work, and it can work really well. But as you said, it depends very vastly who your manager is. Like, there are some awful managers out there who don't track what their staff are doing. They don't know what their staff are doing. They're just kind of pawns in a larger kind of thing. And then you get the managers that really take the time to sit down, talk to their guys on a day-to-day basis. They're on WhatsApp with them. They're in like team chats with them, talking through the day, and they know what their guys are doing or going through day in, day out. And those ones have got a much better feel of being able to award like those sorts of bonuses at the end. On the flip side of it, though, if your organisation isn't set up that way for whatever reason, having something trackable is really important for people. Having a goal, having it written down in stone saying, you do this, you get this, you do this, you get this, company does this means this. And having a really well-defined bonus scheme is so important for people. Not having that, it just makes everyone lose faith in the whole scheme, like, almost instantly. Because they're like, well, it's never going to pay out. That's kind of the attitude, I think.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Because you said, like, the manager one can work. Here's my take. I think all of these systems can work. Like, in a perfect world, a utilization-based system can work. It's just that we don't live in one, and customers cancel and stuff happens. I think if you're designing any kind of bonus system, you need to approach it from the angle of, okay, what if everything possible goes wrong, right? But they're still a good employee. Like, you've got to approach it from the aspect of, this person deserves a bonus, but the system is set up so that through no fault of their own, they're not able to get a bonus. If you're doing utilization, that's because customers cancelled and they weren't able to get on another job. If you're going the manager route, that's because their manager is just a dick, right? You have to, like, approach it from that and set up fail safes for that. And I feel like bonuses, and like we already talked about, like the utilization thing. If a test is cancelled for whatever reason, try and get them on something else. If you can, great. That means they don't lose utilization. If you can't, give them utilization anyway. I feel like that's a solution where, yeah, okay, it kind of sucks because you're giving them bonus even though they technically didn't do billable work. But, you know, that's just how the world works sometimes. So, you know, I feel like designing bonus systems from, like, the perspective of, okay, what if everything goes wrong, is probably one of the best ways of approaching it, just from a planning perspective.
Start at the bottom, work backwards. So yeah, you take your baseline of everything's terrible, everything's wrong, and then you work back from there and plan upwards to the what if everything's good. I think it's important for any bonus scheme to take into account a lot of those different areas and not just, you can't put all your eggs in one basket and say that's how we're measuring success. That just doesn't, success in pen testing and the hacking world just doesn't look like that, unfortunately. It's such a wide net to cast. So I think you've got to be measuring things and identifying and defining what that time looks like, what billable time looks like, or what utilization looks like. I think you said was the word you use. Utilization, define what utilization is, because it's not just when you're billable or earning revenue. Utilization can mean a lot of things, so that needs defining, and it needs defining as what you're adding to the industry, what certifications, accreditations you're earning for the company, because you can't forget that as well. If you're getting certain accreditations for the company that will end up bringing more revenue in the long term, allowing you to bid on more stuff, that's not a bad use of white space days or unutilized days at all. I would count that as utilization because you're still doing something very valuable. So I think, any scheme, you've got to work from the bottom, work up what bad looks like, and then make sure you're recognizing those steps in between and recognizing what that non-utilized time looks like, and you can quantify it as the important one, because no one's going to accept like those sorts of undefined answers as like, we're measuring it by stuff that I determine. No one's going to be happy with that. You got to put like an actual metric around it and work out and define what someone is doing, what projects they're working on, what accreditations they're working to, all of that sort of stuff. And if you can show that, I think you end up with quite a nice, robust bonus system that can recognize a lot of different things, a lot of different avenues. Yeah.
Awesome.
Have we fixed bonuses?
I wouldn't say we fixed bonus. Like, companies have to implement our ideas first, and they have to credit us as well. We will take credit and royalties. Please hire us to fix your bonus system.
We'll break it entirely so no one understands it.
Well, that's the easy part.
We'll break it down first, and then we have to rebuild it.
I want to close the episode out there because I reached out to a few friends and was like, I'm going to talk about this and I want ideas. And granted, it was quite late in the process, but one of them did respond with at first a paragraph and then basically an essay. And I can't read the entire thing out, but I will at least read some of it. And it's not necessarily about like anything specific. There were thoughts on bonuses in general in pen testing. But I think it's worth repeating. If your top bonus gets you around market value and your bonus is reliant on you having a good amount of billable work and clients not canceling projects, it's not really a bonus, but an incentive to do work. So when there is no work and people are disgruntled because they are under the market rate because of the bonus system, how do you handle the mass exodus? And I think that's a super powerful point. Like, if you're using bonus to sort of top up because you want to pay people less salary, then it isn't a bonus system, really. Like, you should ultimately be paying people what they're worth according to the market. Bonuses should be bonuses. They shouldn't just be top-up schemes to get you to the market rate. Yes.
I have 3 words for that, and it's just, don't do that. It exactly what you said. It shouldn't be used to top up a salary. There are loads of different recruiters and recruitment agencies publish their sort of industry averages, and they, broadly for a lot of the time in the UK, they mostly agree anyway, roughly. When you get to the upper end, it gets a bit more fuzzy when people have like all sorts of add-ons and specialisms and such. But generally speaking, there's an agreement of roughly what people are paid across the industry-ish these days. Never used to be the case, by the way. It used to be all over the place, but you can't use bonuses to top up to that level. I think people just expect a base salary, and there's the clue's in the name. Bonus, for crying out loud. It's for doing well.
Yeah.
Or for going above and beyond is how it's sort of defined, isn't it? It's not just, it's a thing that happens that you should expect. And if it's treated like that, I think you have all sorts of problems. So, yeah.
The other point, which when I read it to you, you were like, yes. So you definitely agree with this, was I think some companies have a hiring budget and no retention budget.
Yes. So I've repeated it again.
It's a powerful point.
A really powerful point. And there's a lot of I don't know if you get this so much in America. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I know very little about American pen testing land. But like over here, you'll remember from your certifications you did over here, you hit a certain benchmark, a certain qualification, you get X amount. Like your check team member aligned certifications, for example. You then go and do your check team leader aligned certifications over here, and then you expect a certain salary after that. But the salary jump is huge between those. To the point where you tell that sort of salary jump range percentage to most sane companies, they'll look at it and go, what, the actual? And it's a big sizable jump that if you need to plan for well in advance, and everyone needs to be aware and on board of who's sitting what exams and the potential for those pay rises to happen. But retention is the big budget that people forget about after that, because they're like, well, we can't pay them that much. We'll just let them go. They say, okay, but then you got to go and hire somebody else. And where's that money coming from? You then got to pay a recruiter because people at that higher level are that much harder to find. Quite frankly, you're not just doing it by posting on Reddit or LinkedIn. So you got to go, you probably got to bring specialists in to find them. At which point, that's all your retention budget out of the window anyway. So yeah, often overlooked point, I think, is how you're going to retain people, and how much that costs, and how much it is to keep people happy.
Yeah. I mean, on the point of, in the UK, very structured, I guess. In the US, quite kind of ironically, it's the Wild West. Salaries are all over the place. I'm not sure anyone really understands. But the US tech sector is just... the US tech sector makes no sense in any way, shape, or form. It is quite remarkable, the amount of money people get paid. I'm not going to complain about it, because I'm part of that sector.
You're part of that problem.
Please pay me less. No. So, yeah, it's great. Thumbs up. But, yeah, on the point of hiring versus retention, it's kind of odd, because it's such a well-known fact in almost any industry, actually, but especially in the tech industry. You make more money switching to another company than you do staying at one. To the point where if you want to maximize your income, it almost is worth switching a job every year, as insane as that sounds. And yet companies, despite that being like a fact of life, companies still don't give much to retention. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're giving them a pay bump, and yeah, you're paying them more, and they're doing pretty much the same job. Maybe you give them a few more responsibilities, but what's the alternative? You hire someone and probably pay more.
Yeah. Well,
quite possibly.
This is a problem. By bringing people in, you're always paying more than like retention costs you. Most of the time, anyway. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes there is dead weight, but you don't mind. But for the majority of testers that you've hired in, they're going to be, as long as your hiring process is good, they're going to be good people who you want to retain and you want to keep. And going out to market to bring people in is always going to be more expensive, because, I mean, recruiters' fees are not cheap. They never are. Yeah, them.
Also, just onboarding and training and everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hidden costs. Well, not really hidden, but there's a lot of costs that people don't think about when it comes to new employees. Getting them spun up. It can take like a month and a bit, even if you bring on someone really senior, to get them integrated into all the systems, especially if you have different pen testing or reporting guidelines, So yeah.
We give people a couple of weeks where we are. Fly.
Just push them out the nest.
yeah. You will be comfortable. So yeah, we give them like time to set up their laptops, and give them time to like get all their toolkits and tool sets in line. We don't have like a standard build we give to people. I like to be people to be comfortable in what their environments they're working in. So there's an element of that, getting set up, learning the systems we use, our reporting systems, and all of those sorts of things that come with it. Just learning where things are in our network, like where our GitLab house is, just all that sort of stuff. Really getting their feet under a table, and then after that, yeah, there's that settling in period that's 2, maybe 3 weeks after that, where they're just learning sort of the style you report in at that company, even how that reporting system works, because every company's got a different one, it seems. Some just write it in Word. Who knows? But whatever it is and whatever it looks like, you've got to learn that process and learn how to produce reports, because you can bet as soon as you get put on a job at that place, they're going to want you to be reporting in sort of sane timelines, not kind of fumbling about a reporting system and extending every job you go on. So yeah, there's that hidden cost as well. That's probably like 3 weeks to a month worth of billable time that goes down the drain too. And yeah, Pentesters aren't exactly cheap resources to hire in either. So from the client side, because there's a lot of loss of revenue there too. At which point you might as well just pay to retain someone, right?
Yeah, and there's also the point that anytime you hire someone, you're taking a slight gamble. Like no interview process is 100%, right? Like someone could be amazing at the interview process, and you hire them and realize, oh God, no, actually this is the wrong person. Meanwhile, you just let someone go because they asked for a raise, and you knew they were good, and you just didn't want to pay them a little bit more money. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Interviewing in our industry is a real weird one. A really weird one, actually.
We should do an episode on that.
We should do an episode. Note it down, sir. But it is a really hard one, because you can have people that are insanely good at interview, and if your interview process is not well structured and explores all the different avenues and quizzes people on like their thinking and thought process behind the answer they've given, yeah, because sometimes turn out the person you've hired might not be the person they thought they were in the interview. We had someone applying to our SOC not long ago who was using AI to do the interview in the background, which is crazy. Yeah, sort of that thing of myth, isn't it? And then you hear about it, and you're like, oh no, it's actually happening. People are trying to do that. It's crazy.
I think we covered quite a lot of good stuff in that episode, Andy.
I think I've had a good time.
Awesome. Well, thank you for listening. I've been Tiberius. He's been Andy Swift. This has been Across the Pondcast. You can find all of our social media links in the episode description and on acrossthepondcast.net. And we will see you in the next episode.
Goodbye.